I'm rather appropriately travelling on the Elizabeth line towards Harold Wood, where two sections of the London Loop meets. The southern section passes through some woods which I'm going to explore later, and then travels alongside the River Ingrebourne through Hornchurch Country Park towards the Thames at Rainham. Now, the northern section follows an entirely different river, a tributary of the River Ingrebourne known as the Brook, which I'm going to be walking today. A quick look at Harold Wood Station first though, because I quite like that it's kept its original station building, unlike other stops on the Elizabeth line which has had a new entrance. And it even retains signs which mention the LNER, the London North Eastern Railway. They took over this line in 1923, though Harold Wood did open all the way back in 1868, originally part of the Great Eastern Railway. So the River Ingrebourne passes underneath the railway somewhere here, and then travels alongside it towards its source at Brentwood. But it's also at this point where the Brook splits off from it, and is even rather nicely signposted on the bridge. It looks like it's going to be a nice walk through parks alongside the river to begin with, but then you're almost immediately hit by the rather major Colchester Road which we have to cross. Oh, and then once I'm back in a park, the path alongside the Brook is closed. I'll have to go round it, I guess. Not the greatest start. The path seems to be much better in Central Park now. There's quite a few of these in East London. There's one in East Ham and one in Dagenham too. This is actually probably one of the more urbanised stretches of the London Loop, at least outside of like major town centres that it passes through, like Kingston or Uxbridge for example. It's all paved footpaths through local parks in the suburbs, and I quite like tracing small rivers like that in areas like this. I did actually think about doing the southern section today alongside the River Ingrebourne in Hornchurch Country Park, but I know from previous experiences, even in the middle of summer, that them footpaths can get very flooded. The river can burst its banks, and I have a feeling that might be the case today after some heavy rain, and I don't really want to be taking off my socks and shoes and walking through the water like I have done before, because it will be freezing. I mean, you can tell we've had some heavy rain because of how fast flowing the brook actually is, and it is still a rather cold day as well, but it's the only really decent day to go out for a walk, so I've decided to do it. Eventually the Brook decides it's had enough of that name, and as you can tell from the bridge, it's changed its name to the Brook. Wow, look how that tree is snapped off right beside the now Brook. Just had to duck underneath it on the path. Wow, this is a very tucked away sign for the London Loop. You can almost not spot that. It's good to have clarification, I guess, though, that you're going the right way. One of the things I was very surprised by when I passed through this area on the bus was that I just saw some deer hanging around the estate, and so I'm glad I've managed to come across some on this walk, even if they have kind of started to walk away from me into the trees. Speaking of buses, I've now come up to the terminus of the 256 and the 294 at Noak Hill, which I remember being a somewhat pleasant surprise how kind of rural it is, right on the very edge of the London suburbs, a good couple of miles up from Harold Wood. I'm surprised I didn't actually ride both of these routes back to back. I had to make two separate journeys up here, but it was quite exciting because I'd never heard of Noak Hill before. To be honest, I don't think many Londoners have ever heard of Noak Hill. Now at this point the London Loop starts to become a lot more rural as it passes across some nice countryside to Havering at Bower, and then through Hainault Forest towards Chigwell Row. But I remember when walking this path that I spotted a separate footpath heading out this way. Now this is the only path today where it won't be paved. I worry it might be a little bit muddy because of that heavy rain, but we'll give it a go. If anything, I'll just come back because I'm starting to kind of loop around to head through the suburbs again towards Harold Wood. Well, it's rather nice to have a rural shot like this on this walk. At least it's a nice open field. I'm not struggling with the mud on a narrow footpath. It's a little squelchy underfoot, but if it's like this all the way along, it's not too bad. Well, it's pretty evident from the sound at this stage that I am passing over the Carter's Brook again. That's continuing for not too much further towards its source, also somewhere near Brentwood. Well, it got a little bit confusing in there. I managed to lose the footpath for a moment, but I've managed to make my way across. This is a bit of a weird exit onto the road though. Right, time to head back down towards Noak Hill and eventually Harold Wood. My first spot, now that I've come away from the London Loop and the Payne/Carter's Brook, is Dagnam Park. Not Dagenham Park, just Dagnam Park. And I've rather surprisingly come across an old manor here. I think this was the walled gardens. Oh wait, hang on. Yeah, this looks like a water feature. Oh yeah, presumably an old fountain. It's definitely seen better days. Oh, it looks quite icy too. It'd be kind of cool if this can be restored at some point, maybe. Oh, there's even some old gate posts here, which would have led into the manor. It's hard to get the greatest shots of deer because they're just camouflaged amongst all the trees and leaves. Wow, there's so many deer in here. It genuinely feels like there's more in here than some of the royal parks like Richmond and Bushey. Well, I would definitely recommend a visit to Dagnam Park if you want your chance to see some wild deer. Now, I have been to Dagnam Park once before, almost 6 years ago, after I rode the newly introduced 497 bus route, which has since been withdrawn and amalgamated into an extended 346. Now, I'll get around eventually to telling my stories of journeys on bus routes around this area, such as the 174 where I first saw deer in the estates. I'm currently posting a photo every day of every bus route in London over on my community posts on the YouTube channel. But you know, 174 will be quite a few months from now, and 497, I mean, that will be into next year at this point. For now though, I'm looping back around through the suburbs. I love when you find little green spaces and woods tucked amongst all the houses. I'm in Harold Hill, just north of Harold Wood, and this area is named after King Harold, the last Anglo-Saxon king of England, who was defeated at the Battle of Hastings by William the Conqueror. So here's evidence that I'm essentially just looping back around to Harold Wood, because I'm passing by an entrance to Central Park again. So I have pretty much looped back around to Harold Wood, which means I'm finally passing over the River Ingrebourne, where the Paynes Brook, which becomes the Carter's Brook, branches off from, which at this point is running right alongside the railway. Passing under the railway leads quite nicely into Harold Court Woods, where there's a direct path straight down it, but I thought I'd take the longer one around the outside just for the sake of seeing more of it. But it seems like it's closed. Investigate a sewage leak. Relevant agencies have been notified. See map for location and please stay out of closed area. There's no map for location unless that's it down there in the mud. And someone has trampled this down, so I feel like giving it a go anyways. Oh wow, the path has even been frozen here. It's gonna be dangerous to walk on. Oh yeah, that is super slippery. Well, Harold Court Wood leads quite nicely into Pages Wood, and it looks like here I'm descending down into a valley. That's because I've headed down to the River Ingrebourne, which is somewhere in there. It's a very thin stream at this stage. It's meandering a lot. This is the Ingrebourne Valley, after all, and because I'm now south of Harold Wood, I have rejoined the London Loop. Aha, there it is. Hard to spot, but there's the River Ingrebourne. I will say that I really appreciate out this way in East London how there's many places like Pages Wood or Hornchurch Country Park where, because of the paved footpaths, you can get a really nice rural London walk at any time of the year, really. You have no worries with muddy footpaths, for example, if you want to avoid them. Now, I remember the section of London Loop from Harold Wood being quite nice, but once you leave Pages Wood and cross over the Southend Arterial Road, it's a little bit grueling because you are on this road for quite some time. You do actually get a view along this road far off into the distance of London. I think those are the Canary Wharf skyscrapers. Eventually though, the London Loop does turn off of the road to pass through some fields to Upminster Bridge, but I'm instead going to stay on the road because there's a couple of things that I want to have a look out for on my way down to Upminster. The first is Upminster Court, a rather fine stately home built in 1901. This is one of those things that I've passed on the bus before and I've wanted to come back to take a closer look. And the second is the Upminster Tithe Barn, which is much older, dating from around 1450, and has apparently now been turned into a museum of nostalgia. Well, I'm coming up to the end of the walk now. I found an underpass under the railway where you'll find pretty much the only tube roundel for Upminster, considering all the signs on the platforms are C2C ones, well, except the one overground platform. And so I end the walk at the tube's easternmost station. I'm already on the train at Upminster. The tracks do continue beyond, past the underpass that I took to District Line Depot, which is technically the easternmost point of the London Underground network in Cranham. I've really enjoyed today's walk right on the very outskirts of London, a little tributary of the Ingrebourne, parts of the London Loop, and some fantastic woodland as well. Thank you for joining me, and stick around, subscribe, because I'm sure there'll be more London walks coming soon. From 5 AM to 1 AM midnight. What does that mean? The Irony Next Specsavers is right next door, by the way.